Tittle Tattle, supporter only Tittle Tattle is underway. If you are watching this and not on the editorial board on Locals, Rockfin, or Patreon, consider joining because you're not going to get the entire show. And you're going to want the entire show today because we are returning to our favorite femme fatale, Taylor Lorenz, Washington Post reporter Taylor Lorenz, who is saying we should not think it's a good thing that newsrooms are laying off their journalists. And that makes me realize that she is basically saying people have been applauding the recent trend of newsroom layoffs. So anytime you see somebody telling you not to do something, it's probably because people are doing that. And that's where the vocal prohibition is coming from. So obviously people are applauding it, and Taylor is telling us why we shouldn't. Let's watch the beginning.
Over the past 48 hours, a lot of people have been cheering for the death of journalism. But the decline of journalism is already having a profound and unimaginable impact on our information ecosystem and democracy. I want to share some really important stats with you that I hope we can all think about before gloating about tens of thousands of journalists losing their jobs. First of all,
stop.
News pay higher taxes and have less democratic engagement. Voter turnout is lower in areas.
Let's be transparent and honest. There are a lot of these jobs that are being eliminated by media companies that have nothing to do with journalism. Okay. I'm sorry. I hate to see anybody lose their job, especially in today's America, in today's economy. But these jobs are not all journalism jobs. Just because McDonald's fires 10,000 employees doesn't mean they all flip the burgers. Paper boys, the paper boys are not journalists. So stop lying. That's the first lie here. Okay. and we're going to have more, but let's continue.
I think you would argue those jobs support the task of journalism. But one thing I would like to add is she's obviously teeing us up to say why this is very bad for democracy, which is like the favorite buzzword right now in the mainstream media is protecting democracy. And once again, she does not seem to understand the valid point that people make that the media has been one of the greatest threats to the Republic of the United States of America, that whether it comes to choosing who they want to be president or applauding and running interference for any other government agency, that they have actually made it quite hard for the electorate to have a government that is ruled by the people. And so she sees it as all these jobs going away, as if these jobs were supporting the health and wellness of the political system in the United States, when many of us would say it's just the opposite, that it has been beefing up a very sick form of governance in the United States. Let's continue watching.
Thousands of journalists losing their jobs. First of all, cities and regions with no local news pay higher taxes and have less democratic engagement. Voter turnout is lower in areas without journalists and news organizations. People are less likely to vote down ballot and in midterm elections in areas with fewer news outlets. The fewer journalists covering an election, the more likely it is an incumbent will win. Political polarization among voters increases when newspapers shut down. Businesses and corporate leaders in regions with journalists are more likely to be held accountable for misconduct. When journalists leave a region, labor violations increase across the board. Factories and power plants that are covered by journalists produce 29% less emissions than factories and power plants that don't have any news coverage. Every dollar spent on journalism produces hundreds of dollars in public.
Like that's just a random extra thing that she's saying about how there's fewer journalists in power plants. Like what? Anyway,
benefit by exposing corruption and keeping an eye on government spending. Elected leaders who have,
if they don't like the government official, they do that.
Can I add something real quick?
Yeah.
As somebody who is a content producer and content creator, I can tell you that whether it's Taylor Lorenz or somebody that she's hired on Fiverr, these little free media clips that she's showing that nobody is getting paid for is very disturbing. I have zero doubt that Taylor Lorenz has hired somebody on Fiverr who lives far away from the United States and is posting these generic clips of what fits her narrative, and that's fine. I'm not mad at that. But let's be honest, okay? She's paying $5 to pay somebody who is going to put clips of somebody on these free websites for their B-roll. Okay,
I don't know if she's actually doing that or not, but I will tell you.
I would bet my paycheck on it.
Okay, well, bet your paycheck on this wine first. And I know that most of you guys are going to need a drink to get through the rest of this video, so this is a great way to do it. These are my favorite high altitude, extremist altitude wines from Argentina. They come from extremely remote regions, from very high mountain areas, 6,000 to 9,000 feet. The grapes are working very, very hard for your palate. You want to be an extremist. All your friends are an extremist. Taylor Lorenz is making you feel extremely extremist right now, but you just don't have the energy to do anything but go on the internet. This is a great way to do it. AllisonWinePromo.com. You get 50% off my wines and 50% off shipping. Thanks to everybody who's already become an AllisonWinePromo.com fan. And again, also a great gift. You miss Valentine's Day. There's got to be some kind of holiday coming up. I don't know. Let's think about Valentine's next year. Okay, next year you're gonna get into this, and for now,
hold on. Some of us have an anniversary next month. Just
okay,
saying.
Bill has an anniversary. Perfect. And let's send Bill some wine for his anniversary. AllisonWinePromo.com. Okay, so let's go back and let's watch Taylor here because she's got quite a bit more to show us. Taylor, please take it away.
Engaged in wrongdoing resign at higher rates in areas with more journalism coverage. The fewer journalists in a region, the more likely congressional representatives for that region are to vote against the interests of their own constituents. Cities where newspapers have shut down see massive increases in government spending due to lack of oversight. People in regions without news media are more likely to report loneliness, disconnection from community, and diminished local pride. Areas without journalists are less likely to receive federal or state funding in times of crisis. Historians rely on journalists.
You're right. The B-roll is pretty funny. The video. People don't know what B-roll
the B-roll is so sad.
It's so random.
Actualized crucial historical events. Political campaign spending and voter outreach is lower in areas with fewer journalists. State, local, and federal lawmakers rely on journalists to expose corruption and educate them about the issues they're writing laws about. Regions without any journalists experience a significant drop in civic engagement. I could go on and on. Journalism undeniably has positive outcomes for democracy, but that doesn't mean that all journalism is inherently good. A huge part of the resentment a lot of people are feeling towards the press these days is due to the harm corporate media has caused various communities. The ways that many reporters stoke outrage, feed extremist ideology, and use their platforms irresponsibly is reprehensible. Local and national media have inflicted enormous harm over the years on Black people, trans people, and other marginalized groups. Corporate media often aligns itself with interests and political.
This is where I lost my shit.
Sensationalized coverage that emphasizes short-term attention rather than lasting change. And as I've said so many times before, the media is overrun with nepotism, elitism, and hypocrisy. But the vast
and isn't that what people accuse Taylor Lorenz of? Hypocrisy, elitism.
Yeah, that is a big part of it. But I will say it again. The first 90 seconds of this video, I thought, oh shit, she's got a rational thought. She's making sense. And then, here we go. And she threw me the curveball. And the fact that she points out liberal bias and there's right-wing media that puts it out there. Well, what about the left-wing media that lies? What about the left-wing media that puts it out there that we didn't need the jab? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get you
not live on YouTube. Not live on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's so many things that the liberal left-wing media has lied about, but she doesn't point that out. She only points out the right-wing stuff. And don't get me wrong, Allison, you and I, we've had so many debates. We've had so many disagreements. The right-wing media is just as bad as the left-wing media. She's not calling it out, though. All she wants to call out is she's pipping and pocking. And my God.
She, interestingly, when you're referencing people who are applauding the newsroom layoffs, like she did at the beginning. A lot of
Right.
those people are conservatives who feel like the media has been very unfair and
Mhm.
unbalanced in the last several years, probably the last 8 years at least. And so she doesn't mention any of that, like the way that the people who got picked up on January 6th, some of whom never even entered the Capitol, or like their ability to get a fair trial. The things that I've covered over the last few years, like you said, yeah, where are they on civil liberties when it comes to healthcare rights, the right patient rights, workers' rights, when all these people got fired over their healthcare decisions over the last couple of years, the lockdowns, just everything that I think people have become more and more uh, just disillusioned with the media about. A lot of those folks she
Well,
talks about at the beginning are conservatives, and she didn't really bring up any of the causes that would have concerned conservatives, specifically over the last few years. Like you just brought up specific civil liberties issues that we talk about a lot on the show here. So yeah, I mean, she's trying to like throw everybody a bone, I think, and say, yeah, I know that there's reasons to not like it. I mean, my
as long as the reasons that I agree with.
yeah, my response
Yeah.
to this is I think I think making a point that we would be better with journalists is true. The problem is a lot of these folks who are losing their jobs, and not even like you said, they're not journalists in the sense they're not employed as journalists, but they might actually have the title of journalist and they're not doing journalism. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
I would say, like, I would love to see places with journalism, but just because all of these layoffs are happening doesn't mean the people who have the title of journalist are actually doing journalism. So
That's
that's the problem here. It doesn't mean that anything is going to get any worse because
a
just
great point.
you're assuming that these people who are getting laid off were actually doing legitimate journalism. And part of the problem has been that we haven't been doing legitimate journalism. And that's why people are applauding and don't care that the newsrooms are shrinking. All right, let's keep watching.
Vast majority of journalists, especially the ones most likely to be impacted by these recent layoffs, are hardworking, honest people that are trying to speak truth to power on a shoestring salary. And the things that people hate the most about the media are not the fault of the journalists. They're the fault of the billionaires and corporate overlords that treat the news journalism industry as a for-profit enterprise. I would love to see the rise of a robust, worker-owned news journalism landscape. But in the meantime,
it's not going to change anything. And I've said this to people before. Look,
Yep.
I'm totally on board with her about the fact that these massive companies that own, the few companies that are owning most of the newsrooms in the United States. And I've talked about the issues that I had as a journalist trying to make my deadline and do all the things myself. Write
Right.
the story, shoot the video, drive the car. I had very little time to understand what I was talking about. Those are all problems. But the greatest problem is the fact that there is a lot of hubris and ignorance in newsrooms and bias that managers or fellow peers are just not encouraging each other to be critical thinkers in any way other than feeling like they know better than everybody else. And it just has become a cesspool of like moral busybodyism. And I think we saw that more than anything during COVID over the last few years of just like shutting down conversation, calling for censorship. And I just don't think the funding would make that much of a difference because you would still be left with this personality issue that is driving a lot of the problem in newsrooms. And I don't think that changes just because you have a worker owned newsroom. I mean, I can tell you for a fact that like a lot of my old coworkers all think exactly the same on the a couple particular issues, political issues over the last few years. And if they all own the newsroom, I don't believe that it would necessarily just all of a sudden overnight change into a place
Mm.
where there would be diversity of thought. I just don't believe that.
Agreed.
Anyway, that's my opinion. Here we go.
I
we
agree.
shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Our whole information system is increasingly polluted with AI content, misinformation, and self-serving lies. As political analyst Jared Yeats Sexton tweeted, "Why do people believe all this crazy stuff?" asks a nation where every industry designed to communicate factual information or teach critical thinking skills has been liquidated by the rich in order to hide what they've done. It's not a coincidence that authoritarianism is growing, as the long plan to destroy education and journalism are.
Does she think that Biden's administration is authoritarian?
Oh,
Does she think what's happening right
let's
now?
continue. I was going to say,
Decades of plan.
Yeah. What,
Now,
Bill?
I was going to say something similar, but let's continue because
And alienation, exploitation, and austerity have already wrought unbelievable damage. Just look at the people spending millions of dollars a year to dismantle trust in journalism. Are these the people you think it's a good idea to align yourself with? It's grifters, far-right extremists, billionaires, and political actors who want to take away our rights and dismantle democracy without any oversight. And journalism, for all its flaws, continues to play a crucial role in democracy and our culture. When a tech billionaire or powerful influencer begins operating with impunity, when
okay,
What is
so
this?
here's my. This is where I. Okay, Taylor Lorenz lost me a long time ago, but I watched this video and into the 2 minute mark, the 90-second mark, I was like, "Holy shit, she's making sense. She gets it. She understands." And then she drops me like a newborn on my head on a spike in the middle of the hospital floor, because she talks about the billionaires. She talks about the tech industry. Well, here's my problems with that. You hypocrite. Number one, you are on one of the biggest, if not the biggest platforms spreading this message on TikTok. Okay. And this is by far and away one of the biggest proprietors of misinformation. But let's just say for a second, okay, I'm just trying to get the message out there, and this is the
And
only
Bill,
platform. Yo,
real fast. If you're watching this on locals in 30 seconds, it's going to go dark for you unless you're on the editorial board. If you're on Rumble, as soon as Bill finishes, it's going to go dark for you. Okay. And we're going to finish up the video for supporters only. Bill, continue.
Okay. And she talks about this misinformation campaign, but why is she not talking about the misinformation campaign by the government? And it's there. It's been proven. The Biden administration, the Trump administration, she does not mention government. She does not mention the overlord that she serves. She's going to come out there and put billionaires, Elon Musk and the other guy who looked like Zuckerberg, but she didn't put out Jeff Bezos because that's who she works for. Okay, you effing hypocrite. This is the problem. The real problem with journalism is that nobody wants to fight the system. Nobody wants to ruin or threaten their own paycheck. And I get it. You got to pay your bills. I understand that. But Taylor Lorenz is the hypocritical, nonsensical BS that comes from her. It's astonishing. It's astounding. I am amazed at the hypocrisy that comes from this woman. Don't, I'm going to blame the billionaires, but I'm not going to throw a flash scene of Jeff Bezos, who I work for.
That's funny. Okay. If you're watching this, P.O. Box 3355, Denellen, Florida 34432, send me a letter, send me a winning lottery ticket, send me some loose change. It's been good seeing you guys over on Rumble. Consider joining the editorial board. We'll see you next time.